Republicans have an 87% chance of winning control of the United States Senate, according to the newly released 538 forecast. Democrats face a fundamental disadvantage on the 2024 Senate map, tasked with defending 23 of the 34 seats up for election, including 8 of the 10 most competitive races and 3 seats in states that Donald Trump won in both 2016 and 2020. Given the difficult map for Democrats, this forecast isn't surprising. The betting markets are in agreement, with Republican odds sitting at minus 600 on BetOnline, translating to an 85% chance of winning. So, with the map clearly stacked against Democrats, let's take a look at the 2024 U.S. Senate map based on the latest polls and see if Republicans are capitalizing where it matters most. We'll go in order of poll closing time here, starting at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. The polls will close in Indiana, Virginia, and Vermont. First, in Indiana, the latest poll from late September shows Republican Congressman Jim Banks leading Democrat Valerie McRae by 14 points. Banks is running to succeed outgoing Senator Mike Braun, who opted to run for governor rather than seek re-election. With that comfortable margin, Indiana is solidly red. Next, in Virginia, Democratic incumbent Tim Kaine, who was Hillary Clinton's running mate in 2016, has led by double digits in every poll this cycle. A recent survey from Christopher Newport University shows him with a commanding 20-point lead over Republican Hung Cao. Kaine won re-election in 2018 by 16 points, so it's no surprise that Virginia is safely blue on our map. Finally, in Vermont, independent Bernie Sanders, who caucuses with the Democrats, is running for re-election. Only one poll has been published this cycle, and it shows Sanders leading Republican Gerald Malloy by 41 points. Given that Vermont was the bluest state in the 2020 presidential race, it's no surprise that Sanders is on track for another landslide victory. Next, at 7:30 p.m., the polls will close in Ohio and West Virginia, 2 Senate seats currently held by Democrats in states that Donald Trump carried in 2020, making them prime Republican targets. A flip is virtually guaranteed in West Virginia after the retirement of Democratic incumbent Joe Manchin. Popular sitting Republican Governor Jim Justice won the Republican nomination and has led by landslide margins in every poll. In one survey by WV Metro News, Justice leads Democrat Glenn Elliott by a staggering 34 points. With those numbers, West Virginia is all but certain to flip to the Republican column. In Ohio, the race is more competitive. Democratic incumbent Sherrod Brown is seeking a 4th term against Republican businessman Bernie Moreno. Brown is an outlier in today's political landscape, maintaining his seat in a state that has shifted strongly Republican thanks to his broad cross-party appeal. He won re-election by 8 points in 2018, even as Republican Mike DeWine won the gubernatorial race by 4 points. However, that was a Democratic wave year, and this time the presidential race is on the ballot. Trump carried Ohio by 8 points in 2020 and is expected to win by a similar margin this year. For Brown to hold on to his seat, he'll need to outperform Kamala Harris by 7 to 10 points. Sherrod Brown will indeed benefit from the fact that his opponent, Bernie Moreno, was considered the least electable candidate in the Republican primary, but secured the nomination with Trump's endorsements. Now, the latest poll from Rasmussen reports shows Brown leading by just 1 point among more than 1,000 likely voters surveyed between October 9th and 13th. Comparably, Trump led Harris by 7 points in this same survey, suggesting Brown is overperforming the top of the ticket by around 6 points, which probably wouldn't be enough. This individual poll does track with the overall average in Ohio, which now shows Moreno leading for the first time all cycle based on a total of 28 polls tracked since July. Back on our map, we'll place Ohio in the tilt Republican column. So 2 poll closing times are complete here, and Republicans are now projected to secure 41 seats, with Democrats trailing a ways behind with 30. The next closing at 8 p.m. is the largest of the night in terms of sheer volume, including almost all of the Northeast, plus a smattering of states in the South. Starting up in Maine, independent Angus King, who caucuses with Democrats like Bernie Sanders in Vermont, is up for re-election. King is one of the most popular senators in the country and leads by 30 points in the latest poll, so will place Maine as a quasi-Democrat hold. In the deep blue New England states of Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island, all three are solidly Democratic, with incumbents running for re-election. Kamala Harris is expected to carry each of these states by at least 15 points at the top of the ticket. The latest polls show Democratic Senators Elizabeth Warren leading by 24 points in Massachusetts, Sheldon Whitehouse ahead by 16 points in Rhode Island, and Chris Murphy also up by 16 points in Connecticut. Next, down to the Mid-Atlantic region with three more reliably blue states, New Jersey, Delaware, and Maryland. In New Jersey, incumbent Democrat Bob Menendez is facing corruption charges, which has left the party somewhat vulnerable. Polling has been sparse this cycle, with the latest survey from June by Coefficient showing Democratic nominee Andy Kim leading Republican Curtis Bayshaw by 7 points. While Kim is a strong candidate in a deeply blue state, we'll place New Jersey in the likely blue column for now. In Delaware, the race is far less competitive. Though Democratic incumbent Tom Carper is retiring, the party's nominee, U.S. House Representative Lisa Blunt Rochester, is heavily favored to succeed him. A mid-September YouGov poll shows her leading by 21 points. Delaware is safely in the solid blue category. Maryland is usually one of the bluest states in the nation, with Biden having won it by 33 points in 2020, his third best state. A Republican hasn't been elected to the Senate out of Maryland in more than 40 years. However, with the retirement of the Democratic incumbent and the Republicans nominating former Governor Larry Hogan, this race has become far more interesting than usual. Hogan has won 2 statewide elections as a Republican in Maryland and left office in 2023 as one of the most popular governors in the country, boasting nearly 80% approval, a remarkable feat in today's polarized political environment. His entry into the race has raised concerns for Democrats. Their nominee, Angela Alsobrooks, isn't considered a strong candidate by any means, but all that really matters here is that she isn't a weak one either. The latest poll from Emerson College still shows Alsobrooks leading by 14 points among 865 likely voters surveyed from October 19th to the 21st. Ultimately, Hogan is simply facing near impossible odds, likely needing to overperform Trump by around 30 points. Alrighty, wrapping up in the Northeast with Pennsylvania, widely regarded as the single most important battleground on the Electoral College map. Pennsylvania's Senate race has generally received less attention. Incumbent Democrat Bob Casey is one of the strongest incumbents in the nation. Since first being elected state auditor back in 1996, Casey has never lost a race by less than 9 percentage points, a remarkable feat considering how consistently competitive Pennsylvania is in statewide elections. That being said, the race has definitely narrowed here over the last few weeks. The latest Emerson College poll, surveyed between October 21st and 22nd, has his lead at just 1% here over Republican nominee Dave McCormick among 860 likely voters. The overall average, including more than 100 total polls, has Casey's lead down to just 2.7% now, compared to the 7-point lead he had just a month ago. Back on our map, Pennsylvania will tilt blue. Meanwhile, down south, Republican incumbents are expected to cruise to re-election in the deep red states of Tennessee, Mississippi, and Missouri. Trump is likely to carry each of these states by at least 15 points, and the latest polls show incumbent Republicans Marsha Blackburn ahead by 23 points in Tennessee, Roger Wicker leading by 13 points in Mississippi, and Josh Hawley up by 12 points in Missouri. The race in Florida is a bit more competitive. Republican Senator Rick Scott won his first election to the Senate back in 2018 by the absolute narrowest of margins, with a 10,000 vote lead among more than 8 million cast across the state. Now running as the incumbent against a weaker Democratic candidate, Scott should win by a more comfortable margin this time around. The latest poll released by Emerson College has Scott's lead at 4 points over former Congresswoman Debbie Mucarsel-Powell among 860 likely voters surveyed just last week. So Florida will lean Republican here on our map, lifting their total up to 45. That's just 5 shy of the number they need to secure a majority should Trump win the presidency and thereby grant his Vice President J.D. Vance the tie-breaking vote. Before we move forward to our 9 p.m. closing, I want to take a quick moment to give a shout out to the partner of this video, Geology. If If you've ever struggled with finding the right skincare routine, you're not alone. Geology makes it easy using only proven, dermatologist-approved ingredients, reducing oiliness, preventing wrinkles, and combating dark under-eye circles. The best part? It's totally customized just for you. Geology takes all the guesswork out of skincare. You just hop onto their site, take a quick 60-second quiz about your skin goals, and their team of dermatologists creates a routine that's shipped straight to your door. Right now, you can grab 70% off your personalized skincare trial set, plus up to 50% off add-ons. Just use my code PREDICTIONS70 at checkout. You're getting over $49 worth of products for just $15. So don't wait. Click the link in the description and get started on your personalized skincare journey with Geology today. All right, now fast forwarding to 9 o'clock, this is Battleground Central Time in my book as the polls close in New York, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, North Dakota, Wyoming, Nebraska, Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. Starting back east in New York, the Empire State is solid blue at the federal level, with the latest poll from Siena College showing the incumbent Democrat Kirsten Gillibrand leading by 26 points over former NYPD detective Mike Sapre-Cohn. Gillibrand most recently won re-election in 2018 by 34 points. Next, in Michigan, incumbent Democrat Debbie Stabenow is retiring, setting up the first open race for this seat since 1994, which happens to also be the last time Republicans won a Senate race in Michigan. Along with Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, Michigan is part of the core Rust Belt trio that is likely to decide the 2024 presidential race. Decision Desk HQ's latest poll average has Trump leading by 0.1% based on 63 polls. Now the question in the Senate race is to what extent Democratic nominee Alyssa Slotkin will outperform Harris against Republican nominee Mike Rogers, a former congressman himself. Both candidates are strong recruits for their respective parties, but it's Slotkin who is consistently outrunning Harris in the polls, the most recent of which by Quinnipiac University, released last week, has Slotkin up 8 points among more than 1,000 likely voters. Slotkin is at 52%, Rogers 44%, a strong showing for her as we place Michigan down in the likely blue category. Over in Wisconsin, Democratic Senator Tammy Baldwin is running for a third term after her resounding 11-point re-election victory in 2018. Wisconsin remains a highly competitive state at the presidential level, having been decided by less than a point in both the 2016 and 2020 elections, and now showing Trump leading by a similarly narrow 0.4% over Harris in the 2024 poll average. However, at the Senate level, Baldwin, like Slotkin, is expected to run ahead of the Democratic presidential ticket. Yet here, Quinnipiac University shows Baldwin leading Republican nominee Eric Hovde by just 1 point, with Baldwin at 49% and Hovde at 48%, also among more than 1,000 likely voters. This is in line with the overall average that has Baldwin's lead sitting at 1.4% based on an average of 65 total surveys. And you can see here in the trendline graph how this gap has continuously narrowed over the last month or so. Back to our map, Wisconsin joins Pennsylvania in the tilt blue column. Over in Minnesota now. While the presidential race is likely to be decided by single digits, Democratic incumbent Amy Klobuchar is a powerhouse who's never lost a race by less than 20 points. She leads by 11 points here in this Republican-aligned poll by Rasmussen Reports, surveying almost 1,000 likely voters. So Minnesota is solid blue here. In deep red North Dakota, Republican Senator Kevin Cramer leads Democrat Andrea Christensen by 22 points, according to a poll of 500 likely voters. As for Wyoming, no polls yet, but it joins the solid Republican category as Trump's strongest state in the 2020 election. Next is Nebraska, where the special election is solidly Republican, but the regular Senate race is more interesting. Several recent polls show a surprisingly close race between incumbent Republican Deb Fischer and independent Dan Osborne. However, almost every single one of these polls were sponsored by the campaigns. The last nonpartisan poll from Survey USA and Split Ticket, conducted in late August, had Fischer holding just a narrow 1-point lead over Osborne, 39% to 38%. On our map, Nebraska's regular Senate election will tilt Republican. I am personally skeptical about Osborne's chances of keeping this race tight as we get closer to Election Day. Nebraska is a deeply Republican state, and while Osborne has thus far managed to position himself as a nonpartisan candidate, Republicans have started spending a lot of money on ads labeling him as Democrat-aligned. I expect Fisher to win by closer to double digits when all is said and done. Down in Texas now, incumbent Senator Ted Cruz is running for a third term after narrowly defeating Democrat Beto O'Rourke by less than 3 percentage points in the 2018 midterms, the closest Senate contest in Texas since 1978. Cruz should face a somewhat easier race this November, largely thanks to Trump's coattails, as the former president leads Harris by more than 6 points right now, improving on his 2020 margin. That being said, like in Florida, the Senate polls in Texas have narrowed over the past month. The latest one, conducted by Emerson College, shows Cruz up by just 2 points over Democratic nominee Congressman Colin Allred among 815 likely voters surveyed between October 18th and 21st. The overall average, based on 40 polls, has Cruz ahead by just 2.6%, with 49.1% to Allred's 46.5%. Again, the gap has clearly shrunk in recent months, as shown on the timeline graph. On our map, Texas moves into the tilt Republican category, bringing the GOP's projected seat count to 50, which means Democrats would need to sweep the remaining states, as well as hold the White House to maintain a 50-50 split in the Senate. Let's wrap up the 9 p.m. closing with New Mexico and then Arizona. In New Mexico, three-term Democratic incumbent Martin Heinrich leads in the latest poll by 11 points over Republican Nella Domenici, the daughter of the last Republican to serve in the Senate from New Mexico. She is very unlikely to be the next one, as we place New Mexico down as safe blue. In Arizona, another key battleground at both the presidential and Senate levels. Incumbent independent Senator Kyrsten Sinema isn't running for re-election, setting up a two-way race between Democratic Congressman Ruben Gallego and 2022 Republican gubernatorial nominee Kari Lake. Arizona was traditionally a Republican stronghold, but Democrats have won 5 consecutive major statewide races here, including each of the last 3 Senate elections. The latest poll from Marist College shows Gallego leading Lake by a comfortable 8 percentage points, with 53% to Lake's 45%, based on a survey of 1,200 likely voters between October 17th and 22nd. This is a surprisingly wide margin for such a competitive state, but it aligns with the trends we've seen all cycle long. The overall average shows Gallego leads by more than 7 points across 80 polls. Notably, Lake hasn't led in any survey since July. On our map, Arizona will go in the likely Democratic column, so that keeps Democrats in the fight here with just 6 states to go. At 10 o'clock, the polls will close in our final 2 competitive races, Montana and Nevada, plus the state of Utah. Let's start in Nevada, where we have another key battleground at both the presidential and Senate levels. Incumbent Democrat Jackie Rosen, first elected during the 2018 Blue Wave, won by 5% over then-incumbent Republican Senator Dean Heller. Now she is running for re-election in right-trending Nevada. While Joe Biden won the state by 2.4 percentage points in 2020, this mirrored the margin Hillary Clinton secured in 2016, indicating a rightward shift relative to the national trend. Republicans followed up by flipping the governor's office in 2022. The latest poll from Insider Advantage shows Rosen leading her Republican opponent, U.S. Army veteran Sam Brown, by 4 points among 800 likely voters surveyed between October 19th and 20th. Rosen has consistently led Brown in almost every poll this cycle, often by wide margins. Her current average lead actually sits at a wider 6 points. Yet based on her 4-point margin in the last poll, Nevada will be lean Democratic on our map. Taking a quick pit stop in Utah now, Republican Congressman John Curtis is on track to succeed Mitt Romney here, as he's up 29 points here in the latest poll of 500 likely voters. So Utah is solid Republican, officially lifting the GOP seat total up to 51 before we even get to Montana. In Montana, a highly watched contest between incumbent Democratic Senator John Tester and Republican challenger Tim Sheehy. Tester, like Sherrod Brown in Ohio, has won re-election twice in even deeper red Montana due to his broad appeal across the political spectrum, but this year presents his toughest challenge yet. Trump is expected to carry Montana by at least 15 points in November. And while Tester managed to outperform Barack Obama by 18% in 2012, replicating that success in the much more polarized 2024 environment will be difficult. The latest poll, released by Siena College, shows Sheehy leading Tester by 8 points, 52% to 44%, among 565 likely voters surveyed between October 5th and 8th. I've started to notice fewer and fewer polls coming out of this race here as Montana appears less and less competitive. Democrats have begun redirecting resources to states like Texas and Florida, recognizing that their slim chances of holding 50 seats depend on holding at least 3 out of these states, plus Ohio. Based on this most recent poll, Montana will be rated likely Republican for Sheehy and the GOP. That brings us to the 11 p.m. closing here on the Pacific Coast. Both Washington and California are solid blue here. The latest poll in Washington has the incumbent Democrat Maria Cantwell leading by 15 points over Republican Raul Garcia. And then in California, Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff is up 26 points over former LA Dodger Steve Garvey. Finally, in Hawaii, no polls yet. The incumbent is Democrat Mazie Hirono, who was reelected in 2018 with 71% of the vote, the highest share for a candidate of either party in that cycle. So Hawaii goes solid blue, meaning that the final projection has Republicans at 52 seats and Democrats at 48 based on the latest poll in every U.S. Senate race. That does it for today's video, though. Shout out to my channel members in the description below. Make sure to subscribe to my channel down below, and please leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. You can check out more content from my channel here, and as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. EP out.